Hello, please take out page 13 and we're looking for unit rate lesson 3, the guided notes. Our goal today is I can calculate the unit rate given two quantities, including fractions in a word problem. So today we're just going to focus on word problems that deal with whole numbers. So let's start. A unit rate describes how many units of the first type of quantity corresponds to 1 unit of the second type of quantity. And what's important about a unit rate is the second quantity is always talking about 1 per 1. So here's some of the words and phrases that we're going to look for that are going to indicate that what's being asked to find for the unit rate. For instance, how many miles can a car travel per hour? When you see per something, it's talking about for one of whatever this is. In this case, it's an hour. How much was earned each week? So when we see the word each, it's referring to 1 week. How much sugar does it take to make a cake? A cake would infer 1 cake. And then simply they might just say find the unit rate. If they say unit, they're talking about 1. We can accomplish this using two different methods. So let's use the following problem to model this. Be sure to answer the question. So the first word problem they give us is a skydiver falls 144 feet in 4 seconds. How far does the skydiver fall per second? So let's highlight that information. They give us a ratio right off the bat. They say 144 feet in 4 seconds. The question they're asking us is how far? And hopefully you notice they mention the distance in feet. So that's going to be how many feet. Then they go on to say per second. When we hear that word per, it means for 1 second. And so we're going to set this up as a proportion. We're going to start our first method. I'm given 144 feet, so I want to label, just like we've been doing in our other word problems, in 4 seconds. Our variable, so I'm going to use x. I'm going to let x represent the number of seconds. Excuse me, the number of feet, because it says how far. The number of feet. So now I know what my variable is what my variable represents. So now I'm going to write a proportion, so I need an equal sign. I don't know the number of feet, but I do know based on what I set up just a minute ago, feet have to go on top. So I'm going to write x feet. Then, now even though I don't see a number, they mention per second. So that actually means that I have 1 second. So the tough part about unit rate problems is sometimes you don't see the second set of the second numbers for the ratio. My question is how far, so I don't know that. That's unknown. And here, per second, even though I don't see the number 1, it's referring to 1 because it says per. So I'm going to cross multiply as usual. 144 times 1 would be 144. That's my first wing. Then equals, and my second wing would represent 4 times x, and I can write that as 4x. So now using the butterfly method, we have our product set up. So now I'm ready to solve. I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. So pause and use your calculator. And hopefully the answer you came up with was 36. 36 equals x. So let's go back and see what the question was. How far does the skydiver fall per second? So we want to say 36 feet per second. And now we've answered the question. The question is how far can he fall, skydiver fall per second? So you're going to notice that there's another method, and I'm referring to it as a shortcut. So before we start this, I want you to notice that after we did all this cross multiplying, we ended up right here. We ended up with what they gave us. We ended up with 144, and we ended up with 4. So this was the result of our solving, and we already had it here. So here's what the shortcut looks like. As long as, again, and I want absolutely to use my labels because that's going to help me figure out what I'm answering. They give me 144 feet in 4 seconds. Now, before I answer this, I want to make sure that that's what the question is. The question is asking me how far, so how many feet per second. It's important when we're answering the question that whatever they ask the question, okay, per second, the unit that we're looking for is on bottom. So I'm going to use this right now, not only as a ratio bar, this little ratio bar, I'm going to use it to mean division. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my top number and divide it by my bottom number. And just like it did over here, it's going to give me 36. So the hard part about this when we use this shortcut method is knowing what our answer means. So we get the same answer. So we're going to go back and we're going to read from top to bottom. This is 36 feet per second. And again, the way that we set this up is important, the order that we set it up based on the question. How far, so that should be the top, per second. That second is talking about the unit rate per second that we want. So let's try one more together. All right, this next word problem says a pump moves 42 gallons in 14 minutes. So 42 gallons of gas, I'm assuming, in 14 minutes. Could be water, doesn't say what it's talking about, but it does say find the unit rate. So when you're asked to find the unit rate, we're going to assume that it's how many gallons per minute. This is the order that they gave us the problem in. So this is kind of a minimal amount of information, but we can still use it. We can take 42 gallons. We're going to use this setup in the order that they gave us in 14 minutes. Now, when they ask us to find the unit rate, they're asking us to find how many of the first quantity in one of the second quantity. That's what makes this a little bit difficult, is there's a lot of implied numbers. So we're going to write, I don't know how many gallons, okay, but I do know when they said unit rate, they're asking me for one of the second quantity. So I'm going to write 1 minute. So now, using our cross multiplication, I'm going to multiply both sides using the butterfly method. So 42 times 1 equals 14 times x. And that would be the same thing as 42 equals 14x. Now comes the solving step. I'm going to divide by 14 on both sides, and the answer is 3. So what did we answer? Well, we're going to look back up at what our variable is. X is talking about gallons. So we're going to write our answer as 3 gallons per, and our second quantity is minute. So now let's try this the shortcut way. Let's look real quickly. When I set up this first proportion, I ended up with 42 over 14. And when I did my solving step, well, here it is again. So that's going to allow us to move to the shortcut. But again, when I do this, I definitely want to label because those labels help us answer the question. So we're given 42 gallons in 14 minutes. So when I'm asked to find the unit rate, I want to know how many gallons per minute. So again, I'm asking for how many of the top or one of the bottom. So I'm going to simply take 42 and divide it by 14. So I'm taking the top divided by the bottom, and that's going to give me 3. So now I have to interpret that 3 as 3 gallons per minute. So what I'm going to say about this is that I think that it's a little bit more clear when we use the proportion about what all the meaning of all what we're finding. However, it's a little bit more time intensive, not bad. The shortcut is much quicker, but sometimes we have to really stop and focus on what are we being asked to find. And that's where the order that it's given and what you're asked to find is very important. So would you please now do the 3 practice problems on page 15? Thank you.